It's been a really long time coming, guys, but I finally got a lore book for Flesh and Blood, and I'm so happy. It just looks awesome. I love holding it. I love caressing it. It's just so nice. I can't tell you how much I've wanted this for such a long time, and I'm so happy to finally have gotten it. And I'm really into the lore and the artwork, and I've told you guys that so much in the past. And I just want to rant about this and then tell you my experience with this and I just want to say, man, the lore book is really nice, and yeah, I just it's just beautiful. Um, and before I go into more things, and before you try to get one yourself, man, I just want to tell you this straight off. I am insanely in love with Flesh and Blood. I want the lore book for my collection so I can keep. I do not care about the monetary value out there. It is nuts at this current time. And that's why I couldn't get a lore book for the longest time because I'm not spending six to $700 or $800 for a book. I'm sorry, it just can't happen for me. This is not investment advice or anything like that. I have no idea what's going to happen to this book, and I really couldn't care less. I am never going to get rid of this, at all. It's going to go, you know. It's not going to go anywhere for a very long time. I'm definitely going to try to keep it protected as best I can when I'm reading through it, and I think it's awesome. But just wanted to put that out there in the beginning. I'm just a normal guy in the normal room, not investment advice and everything like that. But just to tell you, how I got this was recently I had some Flesh and Blood products, let's say, and there was somebody in the Flesh and Blood TCG community that wanted to make a trade. They had the lore book, and I traded Flesh and Blood product that I had to them, and we struck a nice deal, and I hope that it really is good for both parties. I mean, it's definitely good on my side. I've just wanted this for such a long time, and it's meant a lot to me. If the party or parties wants to speak and comment down below, I'll definitely pin it to the top and say, "Yep, yep, you're the guy. Thank you," or "You're the person who did the trade with me, and I really appreciate you, man." But yeah, other than that, I just want to keep the transaction a little private. But all in all, I basically took Flesh and Blood product that I owned, and then I traded it to them for the lore book. And currently, this thing. Sealed, I've seen them go for somewhat of a grand, and I didn't want to buy sealed because the thing is when you buy a sealed lore book, you're really buying the sealed part of it as well, because not a lot of these were kept sealed as much, or we don't really know how much were kept sealed and how much weren't. So if you take off the seal, you're not really helping yourself, and you're paying a premium on top of that. So just all in all, man, I really love the lore of Flesh and Blood, and I want to first start out with saying I've made content for Flesh and Blood for the last 4 months, and when I first started my channel, I don't know if a lot of you guys know this, but I was really encapsulated by the lore. And there's a lot of stuff in the lore and the artwork that really just blew my mind. And it really made me fall in love with Flesh and Blood. And I've told you guys this in the past. The mechanics of the game, if you think about Flesh and Blood, right? The TCG, if I was dating Flesh and Blood, right? The mechanics invited me over and asked me out on a date and took me out to dinner. Then the collectability asked me to stay the night and have a one night stand. But I'm telling you, the lore and the artwork is what made me fall for Flesh and Blood. It's why I love the game, because it's really good. And I'll be very blunt with you guys, is that when I started looking into detail with the lore and the artwork, I was starting to, formulate theories and do all this different, Charlie Day, line graphs and looking into the depth of the lore. And if you've heard me say depth, Bronson's keyword of depth is used so many times in all of his videos. There's a meaning to it because the lore and the artwork, along with a lot of other stuff in Legend Story Studios and in life, has depth. It has inner workings and purpose. It's not very two-dimensional, man. This is really six-dimensional, really big rabbit hole. It goes really deep down into some of these things. And I know a lot of times I say that stuff and it's a lot of fluff. It's a lot of things of I'm just saying buzzwords over and over, but it definitely is something to be explored, and I've had a lot of fun exploring the lore of Flesh and Blood. And I think that I don't want to delve into too much of that stuff on my channel because I want people to figure it out for themselves, to figure out the lore and the artwork and piece it together because it's really an adventure. But that's for another video. And another reason why I don't make that type of content, and I've said it very bluntly in the past, is that I'm not that guy. I'm not that type of lore person who can make videos around that type of thing. That's not my jam. I'm not very analytical to where I can memorize all of the different time periods and the different things and who knows who and everything like that. I'm not good at piecing over the big picture and summarizing it into one big whole thing. Me as a person, I'm more of a person who's digging down deep in rabbit holes and creating crazy ass theories and going into that next level thing. I love doing that. I love digging into different areas of the book, different parts of the lore, trying to figure this out and having theories and different ideas of what's happening in the background. And that's more my thing, man. I'm a theories guy. I like trying to think on myself and making new and original thought ideas. I'm not as much of a retaining information type of person and putting it all together. I know you've heard me say in the past, Kale from Dead Summer Art is really awesome at doing that, and I give him props. And the reason why I don't make as many videos that covers just the lore in general is because he does it really well. He pieces the puzzle pieces together really beautifully, and it just syncs all well. And I'm not too much of that. I definitely want to delve into more of those topics and theories in the future, but for now, man, I haven't talked about it, but I know that on the surface, you might see me and you might think, oh, this guy doesn't really look at that stuff. But I'm telling you, the truth of the matter is I do. The lore and the artwork are awesome. It is really cool. And let me tell you, there is a reason why it's called Legend Story Studios. It's not Legendary Game Studios. It's not Legendary Investment Studios. It's Legend Story Studios because this thing is really well written. It's really awesome. And it's just not only well written, but just the illustrations are perfect and there's a bunch of things that you have to look into and there aren't like there and it's not really there and it doesn't tell you immediately what things are. You have to put pieces together. It is a puzzle. That's a great analogy for this. And the best way that I can give you an example of how this is, because you might say, Bronson, dude, it's a book, it's a story. Come on, get over yourself. It is what it is. Well, there's a page in this book, and I believe it's in the Aria section with Bravo, and it shows this hidden this page, and there's certain things that are errated out because the page was worn out. It's a worn out book, man. It's an old book that they're reading it from, and it takes different verbiage out, so you have to really think like, hey, what does this mean? What is going on here? That is a perfect example of how Flesh and Blood and Legend Story Studios gives you what is in front of you, but you have to take that and then take a bunch of other puzzle pieces that they littered everywhere else and put things together and make sense of things. And it's just beautiful. And at this current time in 2021, not much I feel has been totally confirmed and things aren't really solidified, but yeah, I don't know. I just love it for that reason. I just love delving deep into rabbit holes and figuring stuff out, and I just think it's beautiful. It's just awesome, and it's really why I love Flesh and Blood. It's the reason why I'm very passionate about it, because there is a lot of depth. And if you're listening to me now, and you're interested, and you think, okay, Bronson, what do you mean by this? Check out my earlier videos when I first started my channel. The ones that are about duality. Duality is a big thing. It's a big theory that I've had for a very long time. I think I'm the only one out there making content, making videos, or even talking about it on any forum. Nobody's talking about duality, but it's just a big theory that I've always had, that different regions are a polar opposite of one another, and there's this whole thing of this and that, and even in another thing to note, and the new Monarch product release, that shows even more about what I was saying earlier of duality. It's, the angels versus the demons. It's, polar opposite things. And when I say this, I mean, the pits, right? Their polar opposite is Mysteria, because the pits is just raw and real. Mysteria is shrouded in shadows. And then obviously you have the what is it? You have Solana and Demonostry, who are polar opposites, the light and the arcane or darkness. And then you have the Savage Lands and Arya. Arya is very beautiful and everything's pretty. And then the Savage Lands, you literally have an ogre guy just eating the guts out of someone else. And then the final one I haven't said is you have Metrix and Volcor, and those are polar opposites. And you might think that's a stretch, but it's more of like magic and mysticism. With Volcor, it's magical, and then the what was it? Metrix is more science and technology, and that is actually a huge one too. Because if you look at Legend Story Studios website, go to the website. What do you see? You see one side has Volcor and the other has Metrix. Dude, it shows like these are polar opposites. It's a duality. It's two different things. And I don't think everything's as black and white as those two things at all in Flesh and Blood, but I think that that is a common theme that we see there, and I haven't really gotten that told to me. It's a theory that I've had for a very long time, and it could be right, it could be wrong, but it's something that just made me think. It's made me use this part of my brain, the front part, the front part of the forehead, and just think about things in depth and not just take things at face value. And that's why I think it's awesome. I think that it's really cool how you have something, this type of book, that of course, there's a lot of cool stories about Dorinthia's, childhood and growing up, and you have all these stories of different heroes, but in different things in the book, there's things that you can piece together that aren't totally right at you. So, and I just for all those reasons, let me tie this in a little bow at the end. Is that is why I love having this book. I don't really give a shit about the financial value of this. I don't care what happens to this long term. I just want it because it's awesome and it's a really big piece of history. And for any of you out there too who want the book and who are like, well, you know, I'm not in a position with Bronson where I can trade, or I just can't spend $600. I do think this book will get reprinted. Like a lot of books, this might be the first edition book, and then they'll do like a second edition and a book. I think that is definitely a possibility, and the reason why is because the book's titled Vol1. So I think that they'll definitely make volume 2, they'll make volume 3, make volume 4, and maybe at the very end of all this book printing, they will, or all these books that they produce, they'll do a box set of, okay, this is the 4 box set of the lore book of Flesh and Blood. I could see that definitely occurring to where you can do that, or maybe they'll make a combined book of all the books of Flesh and Blood into one solid thing. But I think that it definitely will be more available in the future. So if you wait maybe 2 to 3 years, I could definitely see it more uh, being printed again. I mean, it's a book, man. But yeah, and another key point of that is I think that's good. I think it's okay to do that because, like I said in previous videos, Legend Story Studios is focus. They are a trading game company. They are not a book company. They're not trying to sell books in their realm. So I think in this era of 2021, it's smart that they're just focusing on the cards because it's what they do. It's the point of their whole thing. Later on, I think it's important for them to finally go back and say, okay, people would want to buy this. This is a nice thing that we could give out to the public. But I just want to harp to that. I think that this type of stuff, the story and lore and artwork are really misunderstood. And right now, I think it's really nice how it is where you can, delve into it and try to figure things out. But I think there's a reason behind it. I think the flat out reason that's done like this now is because Legend Story Studios is focusing on other things. They're focusing on producing the game, and later on, once they delve into the story more and more people get involved in that, I think that you will definitely see a big surge in people wanting to understand the story. But overall, I think the trade I made was good. I think personally, the person I traded with, long term, in 5 to 10 years, that they might have more of a financial, thing on their plate. But honestly, I don't care. I just want to reiterate in the end, I really appreciate the trade that was done. It was very nice of the party to agree to the trade and to be very nice in the whole process. I just really appreciate it, man, because I wanted this. I wanted this for so long. It's just I couldn't justify spending the money. It's just too much money, and I know I've spent a lot of stuff, money on other stuff in Flesh and Blood, and in the grand scheme of things, I could have, threw down the 600 to 800 at this current time to get the book. It's just a lot for one book, but I was very happy with the trade I made, and yeah, um, I yeah, and if you don't have this book in this current time period, uh, check out the PDF. There's a free download on the Reddit. I made a video about it. You can search my channel for that video, and essentially that video just has a link down below where you can download the PDF for this book. It's totally online. It's free, so you can definitely do without the book. I just have a love for Flesh and Blood, and I have a love for the lore and the artwork. And I'll tell you, it is different in person. It feels so nice, like holding something in my hand in the flesh and blood. Ha ha! It's lore in the flesh and blood. Yeah, it's like I don't know. It I know that's kind of weird, but I don't know. And it's a lot heavier than I thought. This thing's uh this thing's pretty heavy. It's very high quality. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. I'm just very humbled and honored and really appreciate getting the book. I'm definitely gonna keep it well well covered and make sure it doesn't get too damaged. But I definitely am happy that I got it unsealed because I want to flip through it and I want to look around. I mean, I've already gone through it like, for at least 2 to 3 hours, I think, so far. And I just got it yesterday. So yeah, it's just really, really happy. There's not much more than that. But yeah, I just want to end off saying that if you're interested in the lore and artwork, just go for it, man. And there is a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of things to discover, and I don't want to ever ruin stuff for people, but hopefully the previous videos I've made in the past really show you that there is something here, and there are things to really figure out for yourself and go on a little adventure. And I hope you enjoy the lore and the artwork as much as I do, because it's really something special. So, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.